Hare Krishna, everybody, and today we are on the third day of the Bhagavad Gita course for adults, the 7 p.m. English one of the 41st batch. I extend a warm welcome to all of you, and also thank you for taking the time to come and spend with the Bhagavad Gita to listen to the words of the Lord Bhagavan himself. Let's pay our humble obeisances to this course, which is being offered because of the benevolence of Namnishta Prabhu of ISKCON Mangalore. So let's continue our journey of understanding Bhagavad Gita in 18 days, not all the verses, but the flow of the verses. Let's pay our respectful obeisances to the beautiful deities of the ISKCON Radhakrishna temple. And let's pay our obeisances to Guru before starting. Om Ajnana Timiran Dasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I would like to pay my humble and respectful obeisances to the founder Acharya of ISKCON, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, his disciple, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Guru Maharaj, and the temple president, His Grace Namanishta Das Prabhu, and also to my gurus, Aishwarya Mataji, and also Rashmi Mataji. I'm grateful to them because without them and all the other Prabhuji's and Mataji's classes I have attended from ISKCON Mangalore, I would not be eligible to even discuss the Gita. So today we are on chapter 3, Karma Yoga. So Karma Yoga actually is, a highly misconceived word. Many people think that just anybody who's doing karma is actually doing karma yoga. So we will hear many people saying that, oh, I am actually a karma yogi, I am doing karma yoga. But karma yoga, they are actually doing just karma. Because Krishna will explain in this chapter that karma everyone has to do. Even when you're not doing anything, you are doing something. So karma is something that everyone is doing. But karma yoga is something very different, and we will see it in the yoga ladder today. Karma yoga is in a much higher level, which comes as we come to those verses, we will understand that better. But for starts, you need to just have the idea that what we have traditionally, the idea of karma yoga being simply somebody doing all his duties is not karma yoga. Simply doing all the things that you need to do for your survival is simply karma. It's not karma yoga. So let's proceed. Let's just look at the broad outline of how this chapter is going to look like. In the very beginning, in 3.1 and 2, Arjuna will express his confusion. So actually in chapter 2, Krishna will explain in detail the Sankhya Yoga, that is the, how these yogis, they discriminate between what exactly the soul is, what is eternal, what is not. For that, they're using a lot of their intelligence and meditation. And then Krishna talks also about how he needs to do his duty, giving so many explanations, and he answers every doubt that Arjuna expresses as to why he didn't want to do the war. So this Arjuna's confusion is expressed in 3.1 to 2 and then up to 9. Krishna very beautifully explains to us what is exactly renunciation, because again, there's a lot of misconception about this word renunciation or sannyas. The people think that spirituality itself is simply to stop working and only sit and meditate. But that's not true. One has to do your work. And when you do your work with devotion to the Lord, then it is karma yoga. And that is actually a little higher up in the, it's actually a beginning of the ladder of spirituality. But below that, there are levels which people misconstrue as karma. Then we have 3.10 to 3.16. Krishna will explain the yoga ladder. He will explain how Nishkam Karma Yoga is higher than Jnana Yoga, and he will explain how people will, you can move step by step on that ladder. Then Krishna will explain from 3.10 to 16. He also explains from Karma Kanda how you move to Karma Yoga. 3.17 to 3.35 talks a lot about exemplary lifestyle, how important it is for people to be role models. And he also speaks about how Nishkam Karma Yoga, how they should set a right, people who are Nishkam Karma Yogis, how they should set the right example and not, try to tell people that they need to just sit and meditate. They need to show people that, they need to continue doing their duty. And Krishna and 3.22 actually gives his own example. He says that, he is actually transcendental. There is no reason for him to do anything. But when he comes on the earth, when he appears here, he still maintains his transcendental body, but he does all his duties. He pays, he bows down to his parents, he takes diksha, he takes education from the guru, and he does all his duties and roles as a role model, although he really doesn't need to do anything because he's the Lord of the universe. So then 3.22 Krishna shows us that how he himself does everything required to do to set the right example, and how each one of us are role models for someone, and we need to remember as we conduct ourselves. 3.36 to 43, Krishna will then speak about the biggest challenge of spiritual life. And these are some of my favorite verses. It talks about what is the biggest challenge. So we'll come to there and we'll discuss it further. So this is the takeaway would be that karma kanda, the difference between karma yoga and karma kanda, one needs to understand. So karma kanda is basically doing ritualized things. For example, it refers to ritualized means to derive sense enjoyment using different means, such as devata worship. So people do different kinds of, they use different methods just to, and their main target is always sense enjoyment. Whereas the karma yoga is quite the opposite. Whatever one does only to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he is constantly in communion or yoga with the Lord, and everything he does, he offers it to Krishna. So when you reach that mental state of Krishna consciousness and when you're doing your work, only then it turns to karma yoga. So there is a difference there. And here are two verses, one from Srimad Bhagavatam, which says, Savai pumsham paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahai tuki apratihata yayatma suprasidate. It means that the supreme occupation of dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to the loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted, and it should be to completely satisfy the self, not to satisfy your senses. There's a difference there. And in this verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, it says, Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikeshena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. So in chapter 3 here, we are also trying to focus on what exactly is devotional service or bhakti, because that is the highest level one can reach. It means when you engage all your senses in the service of the Lord or Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of Senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is you get freed from all your material designation. Simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, your senses also become purified. So don't worry if it's not becoming clear now. Eventually, Krishna will be explaining everything in detail. Here we begin actually the chapter with Arjuna asking the question, which way do you really want me to go? So Arjuna in his heart of hearts actually wants to not fight, right? He feels all these different emotions and he doesn't feel like fighting. He doesn't want to actually fight. And so when Krishna gives the whole discourse and the entire summary of the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, Arjuna still expresses his doubt. He says that you are asking me to, think and meditate and think about the soul and its different qualities, and you have given so much of detail in the verses 2.11 to 30, and thereafter in 2.30 to 53, at the same breath, you're also telling me that do your karma, get up and fight. So I'm very confused. He says, Ekam Vada in 3.2, tell me one thing decisively, and you tell me do this. Don't make me confused. So Arjuna, as most of us, tend to think So spirituality is about stopping everything and sitting and doing only devotional service. And so Krishna clarifies, he in fact uses very strong words like pretender or mithyachari. And he says how there are people who pretend to be doing spiritual service and they stop all their duties, and they're actually falsely, they're not actually they're not renunciates, they're merely pretending. So Krishna says in 3.4, not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction. Some people will just take, they'll wear the dress of the sannyasi and they will think that they're actually abstaining from work, but they're not. They're actually cheating themselves because they still have all their desires and things left. And Krishna says that nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Simply when you stop doing your work, you can't attain perfection. So Krishna is very, very clear. Now look at this sannyasi here, the picture of sannyasi. Can anyone tell me what is looking incorrect in this picture? Anyone would like to share?
He's smoking.
He's smoking, exactly. In devotional service, there are no addictions. Smoking is an addiction. And so when you're on the spiritual path, you cannot be smoking. However, using the phone cannot be considered something wrong, because right now, many of you, in fact, must be listening to the class using the phone. Anything when you use it for the service of Krishna, it is correct. It is used most optimally. The best way it can be used is when you offer it to Krishna. So using the phone is fine. However, we can make out that this sannyasi is having all this, the dress of a sannyasi, but obviously he's not. And Krishna explains to us that there are many people who actually give up everything and they're pretenders. Mithyachara, this is a very strong word Krishna uses for them. He says, कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा mithyachara sa uchyate. Such people are called mithyacharis or pretenders. So it says one who restrains the senses and organs of action, but his mind is dwelling on sense objects. He is deluding himself. He is actually cheating himself. And is actually such people are called pretenders. They cheat themselves and they cheat others. They believe that they have controlled their senses, but the senses are very active always. It needs to be engaged. That is why the highest form in this human body that we can achieve is engaging our senses in devotional service and not restraining them. That's not the way to do it. And then in verse 3.8, Krishna says, he gives clear direction. Therefore, perform your prescribed duty. And he gives very clear instruction that action is better than inaction. A man cannot even maintain his physical body without work. There are many pseudo-meditators. They misrepresent themselves as belonging to some high parentage or great professional men, and they falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life, but they are actually cheating themselves. Here, there is this very famous story of Bharat, King Bharat. In fact, our country now coming to be known as Bharat, it comes from this king's name. King Bharat was actually a very elevated devotee. And earlier in his life, he felt that he must, give up his kingdom and he must give himself totally to devotional service. And he had actually reached almost the highest level. But what happened is one day is that while he was near a river, a deer was crossing a pregnant deer was jumping across the river, and while he was jumping, she delivers, and the little baby is there, but the mother dies in the process. So the baby is so helpless, and obviously it's fine for anyone to take up the baby and the helpless baby and to protect or to give him protection and help him to survive. But because that is, it is said in the scriptures that all these animals and plants and birds are all like our younger brothers and we should protect them. That's true. But again, it's very clearly mentioned that you shouldn't get attached. You can have affection, but like I told you in first 2 chapters, not attachment. But Bharat, what happens in the process of taking care of the deer, he actually gets so attached that he even forgets the main purpose for him to leave his entire kingdom and come and start doing devotional service. He forgets his purpose. what the purpose which he had set out for. And when this little deer had gotten lost one day, he goes running after the deer, and he's running and running, and he's so much attached, he can't do any of his normal routine. And then when he dies, he has to take up the body of a deer. Now, these people would say this is just mythology. People who don't want to believe the scriptures, they would say, oh, these are just stories, these are just mythology. But they are written in the scriptures and they're very much true. And unless, like I had told you earlier, without faith, spiritual knowledge is not even possible. Then we need to understand these different stories in the Bhagavatam. This is from the Bhagavatam, which are true and which gives us, they actually open our spiritual eyes, and we start getting to see things as they are rather than from our material eyes. So this is a story of King Bharat. He has to take up the body of a deer in his next birth, and then it is in his however, Krishna gives him, Krishna is the one who gives us memory and forgetfulness and remembrance. So Krishna allows the deer to remember that he was such a great devotee in his previous birth, and the deer regrets so much that he had forgotten his mission in his previous birth, and so he had to come down to the lower species of animals. And then when in his next birth, he's born as Jada Bharata, where he actually is so precautious that he doesn't get influenced by Maya, that he pretends to be almost like a madman, and he's totally into all the time into devotional service in his mind. So these stories, if you want to relish and really understand and enjoy, please, you can continue learn your study of Gita and proceed to understand the Bhagavatam, where so many beautiful stories explain the lives of the devotees and the Lord himself. So that is the story of Bharata. It's talking about how, renunciation is not really the answer. Just giving up your activity, such renunciation is false renunciation. Some people might term that kind of thing as laziness. They might think that he's just being a parasite because he stopped working and he's just, using the others, the benevolence of others, and just taking donations from others, or money, or what do you say, prasad, which others are giving. True renunciation is when you're able to give up the fruits all the while carrying out the duty. You don't need to go to the forest. Krishna clearly explains that you don't need to go to the forest. Renunciation is when you're able to give up all the fruits of your actions. This is a very tough call, but Krishna is not cheap, right? You have to really work towards it. Even for a simple exam, you have to sit and work so hard. Now, to get Krishna, and after so many births, you've got this human body with so much of difficulty. And then to get Krishna also, you need to have that particular level of achievement. You have to be eligible to get that. So if you are, if you're sincere in devotional service, you'll be able to work towards it. And the fact that you're all here in this class today is clear indication that you are blessed by Krishna to be able to listen and get some understanding of this priceless knowledge which the Gita is sharing. So true renunciation is giving up the fruits while carrying out your duty, not going into the forest. And when you're doing that, nobody terms you as a lazy man or a parasite. So in the Bhagavad Gita, verse 3.9, Krishna says that when the work that you're doing is done as a sacrifice. Now in this chapter and in chapter 4, sacrifice, the word which is yagya, will be explained very beautifully. So please listen carefully. It's very beautiful. And every time I read it, I feel I'm not really, it's the depth is so deep. I feel there's more to understand. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, the work causes bondage in this material world. This is actually the summary of this whole chapter 3. Chapter 3 is actually telling us that everybody has to perform actions. And actions are of two kinds. Either they will bind us to the material world, where you have to keep on again coming back and taking different births, or it will liberate us from the material world. And how is the second one possible? It's only possible when you work as sacrifice for Vishnu, or you act, whatever you do it for the pleasure of the Lord with no selfish motive. Now that's high standard, right? It's very high. But we can achieve it. Krishna is motivating us, and in this love letter called Bhagavad Gita, he's telling us you can do it. And he keeps reminding us and explaining in so many ways. So when you're free from the law of karma, which is, you are bound by the actions and reactions and you're bound to this earth, when you're free from that law of karma, The only way to do that is through transcendental knowledge of the self and the supreme. This is the entire teaching, mainly the gist of chapter 3. So Krishna says, "O son of Kunti." So you can see, every word which Krishna uses to call Arjuna at different juncture all shows the different emotions in that verse. Here, by saying that you are, you are so dear to me, he's a relative, "O son of Kunti." And he says, "Perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and then you will be always free from bondage." So now we have covered these verses 1 to 9, in which Krishna is explaining that the real way of developing detachment is working for satisfaction of Vishnu. So you need to balance your duty towards your body, mind, and duty towards the soul. How do you do that? You do that by in this yoga. We'll come to that again. It is by chanting. Chanting is a way of doing devotional service in this yoga prescribed by the scriptures. And by offering whatever you do to the Lord, you will achieve the highest devotion. It's a myth, totally a big false myth that spiritual life is leaving the family. And there are people who are real or fake renouncers. When these people who fakely renounce the world and they pretend to be sannyasis and they pretend to have control over their senses, whereas they don't have it, they are a disturbance to the society. The purity of thoughts are what determine the level of our spiritual achievement. So true renunciation does not mean stopping activities. It is detachment from the enjoyment tendency where we want to do things for our own sensual gratification, and detachment from the sense of possessiveness where you know the true that truly everything belongs not to you but to the Lord himself. When you understand that, in 3.11, Krishna starts explaining this very beautiful circle of sacrifice, which has always, made kept me in awe. So he explains how the demigods are, like the administrators. For example, if there's a prime minister of a country, he has a whole set of administrators who take care of everything. Similarly, there are demigods. They have the position. They are great, highly elevated devotees of the Lord, and they are taking the position of providing, the blessings to the people as per their karma or their prayer or their desires, and they also are totally dependent on the Lord. Only when the Lord's grace is there will they be able to provide us things. So when the demigods are pleased by the sacrifices that people perform, and they will also please you in return, and thus it is a cooperation between men and demigods that prosperity will reign. This is given in Bhagavad Gita 3.11. Also, then in 3.12, Krishna proceeds to say that in charge of various necessities of life, the demigods being satisfied by the performance of yajna or sacrifice, they supply necessities. But so what happens is everything that we get, food, the water, the air that we breathe, every single thing, actually is because of coming from Krishna himself, because Krishna is giving through the demigods, he provides us everything we need. So what is our duty? We have to offer them to the demigods in return, and not just take it without, thanking them for everything we are getting. Krishna uses the word, again, he uses a very strong word. He says that someone who's simply enjoying all these gifts for himself without understanding that they are all coming from the demigods and from Krishna ultimately, if he doesn't understand that, then he is a thief. Krishna clearly uses the word thief for such people who don't offer it. That is why when you come onto the path of spirituality, you stop eating things, without offering. In fact, in several schools, we do see that even now, although, there are several international schools or, who don't follow this, but in several religions also, in fact, before eating, we do see people praying. They offer their food. And that is much needed because, see, when you offer food, first of all, it has to be vegetarian. And as per the Vaishnava Dharma, Krishna doesn't have onion and garlic as well. So when you're offering food like that, which has nothing which is in tamogun, it is purely sattvagun, and it is only what Krishna enjoys. And then when you eat that prasad, it is actually the food that has been blessed, and you become free from all kinds of sins. People may think that, oh, if I kill animals and eat them, that is a sin. But actually, even if you eat plants also are living. You will find many non-vegetarians saying that, oh, you're a vegetarian, but don't you think that you're killing plants while you're eating? So you may say, okay, I'm eating the fruits, the whole plant is not dying, but then still you're causing a disturbance. So that is the reason why anything that you eat, Krishna explains in chapter 3 here that you need to offer it first. You need to offer it first. That is also one way of staying in Karma Yoga, right? Because you're all the time thinking of Krishna and you're in yoga or union with the Lord. So the devotees of the Lord, they are released from all kinds of sins simply because they are the prasadatarians. They are not vegetarian or non-vegetarian, they are the prasadatarians. They eat food only which is offered for sacrifice to the Lord. And Krishna says that others who prepare food just only for personal enjoyment verily eat sin. So in this Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, we learn something really new. It was totally new to me that the sacrifice is actually a circle. And if you just keep on enjoying and eating and enjoying this world without understanding that you need to do your sacrifices or your role of offering to the Lord, then it is a sin. And then the circle is not complete, and the demigods are not happy, and prosperity does not come because it's all in a circle. This circle is explained very beautifully by many Prabhujis. I have listened to several lectures and I find it always amazing. So all the living bodies subsist on food grains. And where do all the food come from? Ultimately, it has to come from the rains. The rains, how are they produced? Now, this is the big thing, right? This is a big revelation. We learn about the water cycle. Of course, there's a water cycle. But all that has to happen, everything happens through that, there's a subtle energy cycle going on. And those are all the emotions, this gratitude, they all have a, we can't see that. Like I told you, these things can't be seen, but they are all at work, they are all at play. A person will be sitting in a room quietly and chanting. You may think he's doing nothing, it's useless. But actually, his chanting is bringing about a lot of goodness in the world because he's performing yajna. And yajna results in the rains being produced. So rains are produced by performing of yajna. And yajna, how is yajna decided? It is because of the prescribed duties. When you do your duties and you offer it to the Lord, that is called yajna. So in 3.15, Krishna explains that regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas. How do we know what is your prescribed duty? Because it is explained in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and consequently, all pervading transcendence is eternally situated in sacrifice. So Krishna says that all sacrifice is He Himself. So this is the cycle of sacrifice, which we can understand by a lot of contemplation. Every time we think about it, we understand it better because it's a little bit not so simple to understand in the first go. At least for me, it wasn't. So the Lord, is the one who has brought about the Vedas, and the Vedas tell us our duties. It tells us about, what is this stage of life, which parents we are born to, and what is the work that we're supposed to do, who are we supposed to serve, based on our qualifications, based on the qualities that we have acquired because of our previous births, karmas. According to that, we do our duties. And when we do our duties in the mode of offering to the Lord, then it is called sacrifice or yajna. And only because of people in this world who are doing yajna, there is rain. Because benevolence comes from the blessings come, or the demigods become happy only when sacrifice is performed. And then through the rain, the grains come. And because of the grains, we have food to eat. And this food, if we just eat for only our own sensual pleasure, Krishna has explained in the previous verses, that is sin. We have to offer it because the circle will be complete and continue only when we offer what we're eating to the Lord and we have this sense of gratitude. So this cycle of rain and grain is constantly taking place. The yajna has to be done, then the rain happens, and then the grain comes. So it has been explained in a little bit more detail here. Sorry. We people are eating the grain, the body is being produced on the grain, the mud is getting converted to grain, and with the help of rain and the sunlight. So what is grain? It's a transformation of mud itself, another form of mud. It has been transformed by God's technology, and modern science has not yet reached such a level. Our body is also being made from mud. We've seen in the whole Bible, it says that from dust, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. It's just another form of mud itself. So Sri Krishna is reminding Arjuna of this integral wheel of creation and the necessity for us who are part of society to realize the importance of leading our life as a yajna to God. Such yajna satisfies God. It satisfies all the devatas who are doing their administrative job, and they will bestow prosperity upon such a soul. So that is the reason why material consciousness, if it's there, you can maximize your gain by your own efforts. That's what people think. But in spiritual consciousness, once you come into spirituality and you take the word of scriptures, you understand that grains are produced from rains and rains are a result of yagya. So that is one of the amazing, knowledge which gets revealed in this chapter 3. Those who perform their duties in a spirit of sacrifice to the Lord, that is what becomes yagya, and that is called the karma yoga when you're doing it for God. When we engage in yagya, we work in the spirit of sacrifice to God, and when somebody develops this kind of spirit, he develops a deep aspiration. And when the whole society this way becomes God conscious or Krishna conscious, people do their duties in the proper attitude, and when everyone is doing it in that attitude, there is material prosperity as well. So Gita doesn't only tell us about spiritual achievements. It's also a way of, it tells us about material prosperity, how that can also be achieved. So to serve the God for his pleasure, when that is done, then you experience miracles and the universe starts cooperating. So what is this thing called sacrifice in the different yugas? Yesterday I was talking to somebody who were asking the doubt, what is the sacrifice in the Kali Yuga? Can we do sacrifice by sitting in meditating for years together in the forest? Not possible in this yuga. Krishna tells us it's not possible. Arjuna says later on in chapter 6, not possible. So this is not the proper, this is not prescribed for the Kali Yuga. It's for the Satya Yuga, when people had longer lives, when they had more intelligence. Then in Treta Yuga, what happened was that the sacrifice which was given in detail, the fruitive activities and how to do exact the yagya to get different fruitive results, that was which called karma kanda. That is explained, and through doing repeatedly following the Vedas and doing these different yagyas, there is offering to the fire. Through that, gradually people become elevated and come to understand Krishna. And the third one is in the Dwapar Yuga, where deity worship is explained in great detail. And so the deities are also worshipped following very, perfect ways of doing everything. It's given in great detail, and that brings about prosperity. However, Krishna is very, very kind to us in the Kali Yuga, where we have very short lives, we have less intelligence, and everybody is basically a Shudra. Why? Because everyone is, not wanting to work. We're all kind of waiting for the weekend. People just want to sleep all the time. So this kind of nature that we have is because we are in Kali Yuga, and therefore the dharma, the Yuga dharma in the Kali Yuga, the yagya which is prescribed as per all the scriptures is chanting. So that is why chanting is given so much importance in this yuga. People understand the power of the name of the Lord. And you need to balance your duties. If you say don't have time for chanting, that means you're not doing your duty towards your soul. And you are actually the soul. There is also in this Brihad Naradiya Purana, Hare Nama eva kevalam, Kalau nasti eva gatir anyatha. So for deliverance in this Kali Yuga, there is no other way, other than chanting the holy names of the Lord. For in this age, spiritual progress, there is no other alternative. When do we chant? You can chant any time, when you're walking on the streets, in the house, with your family, anywhere you can chant. However, Srila Prabhupada tells us that keep some time every day for japa meditation, so that sometime you stop doing everything and only keep for Krishna. We also have in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32, we have this beautiful verse which says, Yajna Sankirtana Prayar Yajantihi Su Medasa. So it says, it's also telling us that in this yuga, we should do only the Sankirtana, which is chanting of the Lord in congregation. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And before saying this Mahamantra, we can say the Panchatattva mantra, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasadi, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So this is the verse which, you can learn And after saying this Panchatattva mantra, we can recite the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Those who are totally new, you can start by saying it, 10 times or so, and then gradually increase it to 20, 30, and so on. 108 times when you say it, it becomes one round. So one mala has 108 beads. So chanting is something in this very beginning of chapter 3 itself, I would like to, motivate everyone to take up. So this is, I just was looking up Brahma Murtha. Yesterday somebody had a doubt about it. So I was looking it up, and one of Prabhupada's lectures, he says, although there is no rule for chanting of the holy names or reading the scriptures, it's best to perform it in the wee hours of the morning. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that in the early morning hours is called Brahma Murtha. Brahma Murtha is the early morning hours, and that is when one should get up. We also have this famous quotation, early to rise, early to bed makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. So the Brahma Muhurta is accepted as the most auspicious time of the day to perform spiritual practices. During this time of the day, the world is peaceful, and the influence of modes of passion and ignorance, that is, Tamogun and Rajogun, they are less, and therefore we are able to focus on the spiritual practice. And this and clearly mentioned that the Brahma Muhurta is approximately 1.5 hours before the time of sunrise. Although it's difficult for some devotees because they are working, so rising early and regulations are beneficial. But if you can't rise early, you can do it at any time and try to do it at the same time every day. There is also one more doubt which somebody had mentioned. I had just picked this up to explain that doubt. I wonder if that Prabhuji is here today. So in Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, Krishna talks about Yuktahara. He talks about Yuktahara Viharasya Yukta Chetasya Karmasu. He talks about Yukta Sapnava Bodhasya Yoga Bhavati Dukhaha. So that is he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, and all that. Recreation work, if you're able to be regulated, then you mitigate material pains by the yoga system. Leading a regulated life, it helps us to overcome the influence of material nature and be in transcendental consciousness. So here it is, what is this transcendental consciousness? That is Krishna consciousness. So this verse which yesterday, are you there, Prabhuji, who had asked this doubt about this verse? Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam. Is that Prabhuji here today? Fenil Prabhu, was that you?
No, Mataji. I had the doubt of that 2.69 of that Brahma Murta.
You had the so 2.69, that's what I was saying, Brahma Murta you were talking about. But it's mentioned by Srila Prabhupada here that what is night? Night is when the self-realize, the night is referring to the activities which are performed by in Krishna consciousness. So what is now? So people who are materially inclined, for them all the spiritual activities are like night. They don't care much for it. They are materially intelligent, and so they don't care for that. And what is for them the time of awakening of, for those who are spiritually intelligent, they are in Krishna consciousness, and for them the time of whatever is important for the material people, that is like night for those who are spiritually inclined. So that is what this generally refers to. What is night for all beings, that is which refers to materially intelligent people, is actually the time of awakening for those who are self-controlled, that is those who are in Krishna consciousness. And the time of awakening, which is a state of being materially absorbed in a dream state affected by dualities and material reactions for all beings, that is a night for the sage. So whatever is, with the material people think that, okay, this is day and they're so engaged in material things, those things are night for the introspective sage. So this requires a lot of, repeatedly thinking about, but I thought I'll share this with you. So I included this in this presentation today. So this is a very nice, description of how people move from different levels. And this is prepared by Namnishta Prabhu. He has prepared how most people in the beginning, they are in their bodily platform. They are forever in, only bothered about eating, drinking, their body, how they should eat, what they should, the things that they want to drink, what are the pleasures for their body. Such people, they are mainly in their bodily, they're living mainly in their bodily platform. Gradually, they will, come up to their essential platform where they start thinking a little bit higher, and they're more interested in, safeguarding the things that they need for their satisfaction. And then they move on to the mental platform, where they start enjoying, a little bit higher pleasures, like maybe the reading books or listening to music. And then they are, instead of, they don't need to bother. They are in a higher level. They're not so much bothered about the body's necessities. They get taken care of because now they are in a higher platform, and they are in the mental platform. And then there are even higher, those who are more elevated, they are in the intellectual platform. They start thinking, they are in the dhyana yoga kind of stage, where they start thinking about who am I, what is my purpose, and they have at least begun to open up to the spiritual life, the spiritual platform. And finally, when they come to the realization, they are then at last in the spiritual platform, where they are in bliss, because now they are completely detached from the material world, and they are already living in a transcendental life, and so they are in bliss. They are not doing karma or vikarma, which we will come and understand later. They are doing akarma because they are offering everything to the Lord, and see, they are in the blissful state of spiritual platform. So the yoga ladder explains how people, in the beginning, they are like animals. They are only bothered about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They don't believe the Vedas. They only have enjoyment propensity. They are selfish and self-centered. And gradually they start understanding it's my responsibility to educate myself about the gods. And slowly they start taking interest and they try to understand. And then they understand at least of the basics about morality. That is, either you do sinful acts or you do sinless acts. And then if you do sinful acts, you get the good benefit. If you do sinful acts, you get the bad results. Sinless acts, you get good results. And then that is, that is a part of karma kanda, where they accept the Vedas and they use the Vedas again for their own spiritual enjoyment. So these are all actually coming at a lower level. This is the materialistic, animalistic life. And when they start following the Vedas for their own satisfaction, that is where they are in the karma kanda. And then when they start doing karma yoga, that is when they start offering what they're doing to the Lord. From sakam karma yoga, they move on to nishkam karma yoga. So first of all, they start doing with a little bit desire for themselves. Something let me earn and keep for me. Some let me give it for God. That kind of emotion comes. Then there's sakam karma yoga. And then when you reach the higher is a nishkam karma yoga. So materialistic people are only like animals, and then slowly they move up the ladder and they reach the spiritual levels. So this is a verse. This is verse number 3.42. It says, Indriyani paranya hur indriyebhya param manaha manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe paratastu saha. This is really important. It is telling us that our senses are superior to the dull matter. So all these sense objects which are around, which are made of dull matter, and even our body, which is made up of just these, panchabhutas, our senses are actually superior to that. They should be the ones controlling this dull matter instead of getting controlled by them. Our mind is actually higher than our senses also. So our senses may tell us, hey, I want that, I want this, I want to enjoy this, I want to enjoy that. But the mind, instead of getting carried away by the senses as if it is a slave to the senses, it should be the master of the senses. It should actually control the senses. It should be able to decide how to use the senses. Should I use it for the material pleasures which are temporary, or should I use it in the service of the Lord where I get eternal bliss? And then Krishna explains that intelligence, which is a sense of discrimination. Intelligence is basically determination. That is even higher than the mind. So the mind may, start getting carried away by the senses, but the intelligence should actually be the master of the mind. One who has mastered his mind has mastered everything. So mastering the mind is very important. And then when you actually come to spiritual realization, you know that the soul is even higher. And then because you're doing devotional service, your soul, which is covered by contamination, our desires and our past karmas and all this is covering our soul, which is actually so active, and it forgets its true dharma because of the contamination. And the soul, when it realizes through devotional service what is actual, dharma is, and what is actually going to give it true bliss, then, it is actually higher than intelligence. And then when it is in service of Krishna has another name called Rishikesha. So Krishna takes complete control of a person who has surrendered, and it takes complete control of all the senses and everything. Rishi Kesha means master of senses. And then such a person who's in spiritual enlightenment, who knows what is Jivatma and Paramatma, and who has surrendered himself, is in complete eternal bliss. Because whatever he does is actually Krishna's will. He has surrendered himself to Krishna's will. So this is very nicely depicted in this picture, where we can see that the senses are like the 5 horses. They are wild. They want to run after the sense objects. The mind, however, which are the reins, can control the senses. And our intelligence can control the mind. And the soul, if it doesn't have any sense of direction, it's covered by all the desires and sense of proprietorship and contaminated by the material world, will not be able to even take control of the intelligence. So this is if we know that which is actually superior, then we will be able to use our human body in the right way. Intelligence which guides the mind is superior, but we know by experience that intelligence can also be directed or guided. This is done by the soul. The soul is therefore superior to everything, the dead matter, the mind, the intelligence, everything. And then we have the next set of verses where Krishna sets out to talk about how we have to be the role model. He says that whatever action is performed by the great man, common men will follow, and whatever standards he set by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So he leads by examples. What's the takeaway? Role models are people whom we look up to, those we aspire to be. Hence, we must be cautious in choosing our role models. That's very important. So Krishna actually is telling Arjuna that you need to be a role model. And we have this other in 3.36. We talk about Arjuna is asking. This is we coming to almost the last part where Arjuna asks this very important question. He asks, by what is it that one is impelled to do sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So mostly people who are doing wrong things, they know they're doing the wrong thing, but then still, why do they do it? So Krishna is explaining here that the main reason is lust. So through this verse, he explains that as a fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or the embryo is covered by the womb, similarly, the living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. So as you know, suppose there's a mirror and it is completely covered by dust. Now the dust of so many years is so thick, and if you need to clear it through devotional service, so that you can see yourself when you clear it. This is like the human being's body. We are covered. We do have chances of clearing it up easier, but still stronger is like animals are compared to the fire. The fire is more thickly covered by smoke. You can't see the fire easily. So the animals are they find it more difficult to get rid of the lust. And the most difficult is for the plants and trees, which is compared to the embryo, which is inside the womb in complete darkness. And it's very difficult for it to understand and to come to consciousness. So this is how lust, these are just analogies which explains how lust covers in different degrees the soul, which is, in different forms of bodies, either in animal bodies, plant bodies, or human bodies, based on its previous karmas. Therefore, Krishna says, O Arjuna, best of Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, which is lust. How do people tend to do wrong things? It's because of lust. And what is lust? Lust is any form of desire. And what is the meaning of very beginning? It has 2 meanings. It can be like even in childhood, like small children itself, you can teach them. We think that, oh, they're too small to understand. But actually, even small, we have, examples of Dhruva. We have examples of Prahlad. The small, even in the womb, they can actually understand. If we teach them and we show them what is devotional service, and we keep them engaged that way, then they will be able to curb this tendency of doing sin. And another meaning is that before your mind, your senses start telling you to go towards the sense objects and do the wrong things, you curb it, you stop it. So how will you do that? Because you're able to regulate. You know that your mind can regulate the senses. You know that your intelligence is superior to mind. So you stop it. So here Krishna is giving 2 kind of ways of understanding it, that you can stop this great symbol of sin or lust by regulating senses and slay this destroyer. Who is the destroyer? Lust. He destroys both knowledge and self-realization. So what is the takeaway? Takeaway is that people think that, okay, moderation is okay. Little bit of drinking is fine. Little bit of smoking is fine. Little bit of eating meat is good. But what if someone said that little bit of corona is good? No, right? So true strength of character is the ability to say no to vices and yes to virtues. So with that, we have come to the end of chapter 3, in which we see from 3.1. Actually, the chapter 3 has so many beautiful verses, but I'm not able to cover everything. If you go to level 2, we'll be doing it more detail with some, elevated devotee Prabhujis or Matajis. So here we have broadly just quickly run through the basic ideas where Krishna explains whether renunciation is good or action. And he says action, renouncing your fruits, is the best. Then Krishna explains that he gives us a ladder where he talks about how there are people who are totally in the materialistic bodily level, and then they come higher and they are in the Jnana Yoga. They start looking for to understand what is this body, and they start trying to understand what is the purpose of life, and then they move on to Nishkam. From Sakam Karma Yoga, they move on to Nishkam Karma Yoga. So basically they're moving from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga, where they're doing things for their own sense gratification, and then they move on to Karma Yoga, where they're dedicating everything to Krishna. So there's a very good example. Suppose somebody is working very hard, he plants a tree, and then he waters it every day, he takes care of it, and when the fruit comes, he takes the fruit and he says, this is my fruit, I have worked for it. And Krishna comes and says, no, it's mine. How? I have done all the work, I planted the seed, I watered it. And Krishna says, but where did the seed come from? How did the water come? Where did the water come from? Who gave the sunlight? So, we forget that every single thing comes from Krishna, even we ourselves. And then we tend to think that it's mine, it's mine. So there are many verses also which we have skipped here today, where we say that, people who think that this is mine, I am the one doing it, and how they're actually misconceived, because everything ultimately belongs to Krishna. So from the stage of Karma Kanda, they move to Karma Yoga, where they are surrendered and they realize, what is true dharma. They realize that, for example, what is the dharma of sugar? It is to be sweet. The dharma of a bitter gourd is to be bitter. That's the nature. It's a dharma. Similarly, the nature of our soul is to serve the Lord, because we are part and parcel of the Lord. Just like, we are a small droplet in like an ocean. So we can't say, I'm the ocean. The droplet is a droplet, but it knows that I have all the qualities of the ocean. So that realization, when it comes, that is when we start doing our true dharma, and that gives us infinite bliss, because we have now realized what is our true dharma. So we also understand what is dharma in this chapter 3, and then Krishna talks about very important. He guides us that we should lead by example and not lead people into thinking that it is all about only renunciation. You have to be very clear that do your duty well, and that is why Vaishnavas, you will find, in any place they really shine. They do everything perfectly because they offer it to the Lord. Then Arjuna asks about the greatest enemy, and Krishna explains what is the greatest enemy, which is lust. And that is given in, explained in very beautiful detail. So we come to the end of the chapter today. Let's say the closing prayer. Vancha kalpadaru bhyasya kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I've done my best in trying to cover this chapter, which has so much of deep meaning within this short 1 hour time. And I hope I have done some justice, and some of you have at least understood something. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Hi, Parvani Mataji. This is Radhika. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Radhika Mataji?
I'm doing good, Mataji. Were you the one that was the co-host back in batch 39 when you used to work with me? Do you remember who
I remember. I have seen you several times.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You're in America, right?
Yes. Yes, Mataji.
I remember. Thank you so much, Kiran Kumar Prabhu. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We are able to understand the Gita in its true purport only because of Srila Prabhupada. And so grateful that we are able to discuss, and because of the classes which Namnishta Prabhu has organized, free for everyone. Thank you, Prabhuji. And anyone has a doubt?
Mataji. Amazing presentation, Mataji. I stay in the UK. I'm from UK.
Kiran
Yes.
Kumar
Hello,
Prabhuji, you're
can you
very
hear me?
soft. Could you please come again?
Can you hear me, Mataji, now? Better now? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, amazing presentation, Mataji. I'm based in UK.
Oh, thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
So no doubts today. Is it because was it totally confusing or was it very clear? I don't understand. Okay, Preeti Mataji has a question. Could you please tell giving up all fruits while carrying out our duty? Yes. So yeah, this is something which is it takes time to really understand. I have also been really trying to grapple and get the real understanding of it. So giving up all fruits while carrying out the duty will happen automatically when you start chanting. So when you get engaged in devotional service of any sort, which in this yoga is chanting, you slowly start understanding everything. So basically, like early morning, I try to chant my rounds. And then when I'm a teacher, so when I go to school, I keep reminding myself that whatever I'm doing, let me be able to do it for Krishna. It's tough actually. But then when you do that, there's a great sense of, satisfaction or bliss, I would say. I've not reached anywhere close to the real thing. I know that, but I'm on the way, and I can feel that. I can feel how much it actually means when you have that. Your real purpose is to understand that you stop wanting things for yourself because nothing really belongs to you in the first place. So your focus is entirely on Krishna. And when we move on to chapter 6, 7, 8, especially chapter 8, you understand that the real purpose of getting the human body is to stop being in this material world. And as you listen to the Gita on and on, you understand that this material, there is, Krishna explains in the Gita, there is a spiritual world. And we all are supposed to understand through this human body that our purpose is to go back to home. Where in this Gita, Krishna sitting there in the spiritual world, he is calling us back home. Krishna is, of course, everywhere. But in the spiritual world, he is there for us and he is calling us back. He has created this material world just because we wanted to enjoy separate from him. Right. So, giving up your fruits while carrying out the duty simply means that you're thinking about Krishna in whatever you do. So, you're just like, you're just being in yoga, karma yoga. That's what it is. Giving your fruits to the Lord is karma yoga. You're just not attached to the fruits, but you're simply attached to Krishna. You attach yourself to the higher pleasure of enjoying Krishna rather than anything which is material. I don't know. I hope, Preeti Mataji, I've made some sense and tried to get through.
Mataji, can I just extend to what Preeti Mataji was asking? Actually, I actually do teach private lessons, Pravini Mataji. As you know me for so many times when we've been very good friends through Namanista Das Prabhuji. It's all because of him that we've joined this. I totally understand to what you're talking about. I totally agree. But I think what she was trying to rephrase to that sentence was, it's all basically, if you have the faith and you accept Krishna as your friend or as a spiritual master, you know that automatically that you need to basically surrender to him. Whether you're doing the 108 of chanting or whether you're doing some devotional service for Krishna, you know automatically that he also himself is a spiritual master like any god, whether it's Krishna, whether it's Vishnu, or whether it's any other god. But mainly, since we all believe in Krishna and since Krishna has been our spiritual master, spiritually we all should surrender ourselves first before we feel that, okay, Krishna is the ultimate God of supreme God. But I think, as you were saying, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, But I think as you were saying, when you said, okay, it's whatever I'm saying is correct, I think that is definitely true. But however, there could be a little bit more. There has to be many people who are wanting to surrender to Krishna. If your mind is wavering and your mind is going into different directions, then there's no point of just sitting there. Why are you sitting there in front of Krishna doing what? If you really believe in Krishna and you want to start the basics of learning, of chanting the 20 rounds or 12 rounds of japa, and you're not able to maintain, to control your mind and have faith in Krishna, what's the point of sitting there with that if your mind is wavering in too many different directions? Because a lot of my students that come to me, they ask me the same question, and the only question I can tell them is if you sit down 1 hour in the morning in front of God or in front of Krishna, and you just focus only on him, meditate only on him, forget about everything else, just meditate only on him, then you automatically surrender to him. That is the only way that any person that can do that.
Yeah,
And I
thank
think
you so much, Mataji, for that, greater understanding to that question. Yes, so basically it is always very confusing as to why we should give the fruits to, fruits. How do we do that? We do a duty, we're doing things, and how do we not think of the fruit? So I have also heard this question being asked many times, and it has always been, a question which keeps coming up again and again. But if you start, basically devotional service and you keep reading the Gita, you start understanding that nothing basically belongs to you. And therefore the result, what you get out of understanding this and start doing everything for Krishna will be, immense bliss, peace. Whereas if you run after the material fruits, they are always temporary and they can never satisfy you. So I hope that answers. Yeah. Thank you so much. Shall we close if no one else has any questions? It's 8. I think we can close today. I request all of you to please join tomorrow for chapter 4. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.